Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Defiant. The stars outside looked peaceful, but the message on his screen made his blood run cold. He read it 3 times, hoping he was wrong. He was not. The Galactic Council had made their decision, after 50 years of working together. After all the times humans had saved alien worlds from pirates and disasters, the Council had turned their backs on humanity. They wanted all human colonies abandoned. They wanted Earth's military reduced to almost nothing. They wanted humanity trapped in their home system, like animals in a cage. Jake's hands shook as he forwarded the message to his crew. Around him, the bridge fell silent as each person read the words. Lieutenant Amy Foster, his communications officer, looked up with tears in her eyes. "Sir, this can't be real. We've been their allies for decades, but it was real." The message came with an official council seal. It was signed by Ambassador Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire and backed by the Draxian military. The 2 most powerful species in the galaxy had decided that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. On the neutral station Harmony Point, Admiral Lisa Parker was having the worst day of her life. She had come to the station for what she thought was a routine diplomatic meeting. Instead, she found herself surrounded by Council security forces. The meeting room had become a prison. "Admiral Parker," Ambassador Kethver said, his voice like cold metal. "Your species has grown too bold, too powerful. The younger races look to you for guidance instead of us. This cannot continue." Lisa looked around the room at her fellow human diplomats. Commander Steve Johnson from the colony ships, Dr. Helen Davis from the medical corps, Captain Tony Martinez from the exploration fleet. All of them had devoted their lives to building peace between humans and aliens. Now they were prisoners. "We've followed every law," Lisa said, keeping her voice steady. "We've honored every treaty. We've saved countless lives across the galaxy. How can you do this to us?" The Draxian general, Vexstar, stepped forward. His species looked like walking lizards, but they were smart and deadly. "Your kind adapts too quickly. You learn too fast. You make friends with species we have controlled for centuries. You are a threat to the natural order." Lisa wanted to laugh. The natural order. The Council races had been fighting each other for thousands of years before humans arrived. It was human diplomacy that had brought peace. It was human technology that had improved life for everyone. It was human soldiers who had died protecting alien worlds, far from the station. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner was leading his fighter squadron back to base. They had just finished protecting a mining operation from pirates. The miners were Terrans, humans who had left Earth to find a better life among the stars. Alex's pilots had kept them safe, just like they had done hundreds of times before. When the emergency message came through, Alex almost crashed his fighter. He pulled up the communication on his screen and felt his world fall apart. The Council wanted to destroy everything humans had built. They wanted to send millions of colonists back to an overcrowded Earth. They wanted to break apart families and communities that had taken generations to build. "Blue leader to all squadrons," Alex said into his radio. "Emergency recall. Return to base immediately." His pilots began asking questions, but Alex could not answer them. How could he explain that the galaxy they had sworn to protect had just stabbed them in the back? Back on Earth, President Karen Davis was in her office when the news arrived. She had been working on a trade agreement with the Altarian Federation when her secretary ran in with the emergency message. Karen read it twice, then called an immediate meeting of the Security Council. Within an hour, the most powerful humans in the galaxy were gathered in the Situation Room. General Rick Thompson, commander of the Marine Corps, looked like he wanted to punch someone. Admiral William Clark, head of the Navy, was studying star charts with a grim expression. Director Kate Wilson from Intelligence was already pulling up files on Council military capabilities. "They think they can just push us around," General Thompson said, his voice full of anger. "They think we'll just roll over and accept this. The question is," President Davis said, "what do we do about it?" Director Wilson looked up from her files. "Ma'am, we've been monitoring council communications for years. This wasn't a sudden decision. They've been planning this for a long time. They're scared of us." "Scared of us?" Admiral Clark asked. "Why?" "Because we're different," Wilson replied. "We don't give up. We don't accept defeat. When other species hit a wall, they find ways around it. When we hit a wall, we break through it. That terrifies them." On the colony world of New Eden, Governor Sam Collins was reading the council's ultimatum to a crowd of 10,000 colonists. These people had left Earth to build new lives. They had worked in mines and farms and factories. They had raised children under alien suns. Now they were being told to abandon everything. "They want us to leave," Sam said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "They want us to pretend the last 50 years never happened. They want us to forget our friends, our homes, our dreams." The crowd was silent. Then, from the back, someone shouted, "What do we do?" Sam looked out at the faces before him. These were not soldiers or politicians. They were ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. They had built a civilization among the stars. They had proven that humans belonged in the galaxy. "We fight," Sam said simply. "We fight for our homes. We fight for our children. We fight for our right to exist." The crowd erupted in cheers. Similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of human worlds. The council had expected fear and submission. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. On Mars, the red planet that had been humanity's first step toward the stars, the colonial government was already mobilizing. The shipyards were working double shifts. The communication networks were buzzing with encrypted messages. The council had made their move. Now it was humanity's turn. In the depths of space, exploration ships were changing course. Science vessels were heading home. Trade ships were abandoning their routes. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered the most stubborn species in known space. The council had crossed the line. They thought they were dealing with just another species that would bow to their will. They were about to discover their mistake. Humanity's wrath was about to be unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Every colony, every station, every ship received the same message. The Galactic Council had declared war on humanity without firing a single shot. They wanted to destroy everything humans had, built among the stars. On Mars, Governor Sam Collins was not sleeping. He had been awake for 36 hours, coordinating the planet's response to the Council's ultimatum. The Red Planet had been humanity's first real colony, and Sam was determined it would not be their last. "Status report," Sam said to his aide, Lieutenant Nancy Brown. "All defense platforms are online," Nancy replied. "The shipyards are working at maximum capacity. We're producing one new warship every 3 days." Sam nodded. Mars had always been more than just a colony. It was humanity's backup plan, their second home. The planet had massive industrial complexes, millions of citizens, and enough firepower to defend itself. If the Council wanted Mars, they would have to take it by force. In the Outer Rim, Dr. Maya Rodriguez was working in her laboratory on Europa. She was supposed to be developing new life support systems for long-range exploration. Instead, she was creating weapons that would make the Council regret their decision. "Doctor, the prototype is ready," said her assistant, Dr. Jim Kelly. Maya looked at the device on her workbench. It was small, about the size of a coffee cup, but it contained enough destructive power to level a city block. The Council thought they knew everything about human technology. They were wrong. "Begin mass production," Maya ordered, "and send the plans to every human colony. It's time to show the galaxy what human science can really do." Maya's team had been working on defensive technologies for years. Now those same technologies would become weapons of war. The Council had awakened humanity's creativity, and that was always dangerous. Captain Ben Hayes was commanding the exploration vessel, U.S. Horizon, when the recall order came through. His ship was 3 months out from the nearest human colony, deep in uncharted space. He was supposed to be mapping new star systems and looking for habitable worlds. Captain, his first officer, Lieutenant Carol White, said, "We're receiving emergency orders from Earth Command." Ben read the message and felt his stomach drop. The Council was trying to destroy humanity's future. They wanted to cage his species like animals. Well, they were about to learn that humans were not good at staying caged. "Set course for Earth," Ben ordered. "Maximum speed." The Horizon was not a warship. It was a science vessel, built for exploration and discovery. But Ben's crew were not ordinary scientists. They were humans, and humans had a talent for adapting to new situations. If the Council wanted war, they would get it. On Earth, President Karen Davis was meeting with the leaders of every human colony. The holographic conference room was filled with governors, admirals, and generals from across human space. They were all asking the same question: what now? "The Council has made their position clear," Karen said. "They want us gone. They want our colonies abandoned and our military destroyed. They think we'll just accept this." "Like hell we will," said Admiral William Clark. "I've got 400 ships ready to fight. Give me the word, and I'll show them what human determination looks like." Karen looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. These were people who had built an interstellar civilization from nothing. They had overcome every obstacle the galaxy had thrown at them. They would not be stopped by a group of arrogant aliens. "We're not abandoning our colonies," Karen said firmly. "We're not reducing our military. We're not going back to being prisoners in our own solar system. The Council has declared war on us. We accept." The room erupted in agreement. From the mining worlds of the Outer Rim to the agricultural planets of the inner colonies, humanity was united in their defiance. The Council had expected fear and submission. Instead, they had created the most dangerous enemy they could imagine: a united human species with nothing left to lose. On the colony world of New Haven, children were being evacuated to safer locations. The planet was too close to Council space to be easily defended. But even as the evacuation ships launched, the colonists were preparing to fight. "We're not running away," said Colonel Danny Ross, the planet's military commander. "We're just moving our families to safety. Then we come back and show these aliens what humans do to bullies." The evacuation was voluntary, but most families chose to send their children away. The adults stayed behind to defend their homes. They were farmers and miners and teachers, but they were also humans, and humans did not surrender. In the asteroid belt, the mining stations were converting their industrial equipment into weapons. The same machines that carved up asteroids could be used to destroy Council ships. The miners were tough, independent people who had chosen to live in one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. They were not afraid of a fight. "Those Council bastards want to take our homes," said Station Chief Mary Johnson. "Well, they can try, but they're gonna find out that humans don't scare easy." The asteroid miners had been overlooked by the Council. They were seen as simple workers, not a threat. That was a mistake. The miners had access to explosives, heavy machinery, and a deep understanding of space construction. They would make the Council pay for their arrogance. On the research station Olympus, scientists were working around the clock to develop new technologies. The station orbited Jupiter and was home to humanity's most advanced research facilities. The scientists there were not soldiers, but they were about to become something much more dangerous: angry humans with access to cutting-edge technology. Dr. Robert Kim was leading a team that had been studying alien technology for years. Now, They were using that knowledge to create weapons that could turn the Council's own advantages against them. "We've cracked their shield technology," Robert announced to his team. "We can build weapons that go right through their defenses." The research station was supposed to be neutral, focused on peaceful science, but the Council had made neutrality impossible. Now the scientists were working for the war effort, and their contributions would be devastating. In the outer colonies, merchant ships were being converted into warships. The conversion was not pretty, but it was effective. Cargo holds were filled with weapons. Passenger areas were turned into barracks. The ships were not as advanced as military vessels, but they were numerous and crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. Captain Lisa Murphy had been running cargo between the colonies for 15 years. Now her ship, the Star Trader, was armed with missile launchers and carrying a crew of former military personnel. She was not a soldier, but she was a human, and humans protected their own. "The Council thinks they can just push us around," Lisa said to her crew. "They think we're weak because we prefer peace. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The merchant fleet was vast, spread across hundreds of star systems. The Council had no idea how many ships humanity could put into the field. They were about to find out. On Earth, the factories were working day and night. The planet that had given birth to humanity was now preparing for the greatest war in galactic history. Every resource was being directed toward the war effort. Every human was contributing to the fight. In the training centers, volunteers were learning to fight. They were farmers and teachers and office workers, but they were also humans. And humans had a talent for war that the galaxy had never seen before. Remember, Sergeant Tom Anderson told his trainees, "We're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for survival. We're fighting for the right to exist. That makes us the most dangerous enemy the galaxy has ever faced." The storm was gathering. Across human space, millions of people were preparing for war. The Council had crossed the line, and now they would face the consequences. Humanity's wrath was about to be unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Lisa Parker stood before the emergency assembly of the Human Defense Council. Her uniform was torn and dirty from her escape from Harmony Point. The Council's security forces had tried to keep her prisoner, but they had not counted on human determination and the help of loyal alien friends. "The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity," Lisa announced to the room full of military leaders. "Not officially, but through their actions. They want to cage us in our home system while they divide our colonies among themselves." The room was silent. These were the men and women who commanded humanity's military forces. They had spent their careers trying to keep peace in the galaxy. Now they were being forced to prepare for the biggest war in galactic history. General Rick Thompson, commander of the Marine Corps, slammed his fist on the table. 50 years, he said, his voice full of anger. 50 years we've been their allies. We've saved their worlds from pirates. We've helped them rebuild after disasters. We've died for them, and this is how they repay us. Rick's Marines were the toughest fighters in known space. They had served on 100 different worlds, protecting alien civilians and fighting alongside alien soldiers. Now those same aliens were trying to destroy humanity's future. Commander Kate Wilson, head of human intelligence, stood up. "I have evidence," she said, activating a holographic display. "We've been monitoring Council communications for years. They've been planning this for a long time." The display showed secret recordings of Council meetings. In them, alien leaders discussed the human problem in detail. They talked about humanity's growing influence among the younger species. They worried about human adaptability and creativity. They feared that humans were becoming too powerful to control. "They're scared of us," Kate continued. "They see how the younger races look up to us. They see how we solve problems they can't solve. They see how we make friends with species they've been controlling for centuries. They want to destroy us before we become too strong." Admiral William Clark, head of the Navy, studied the star charts on the wall. What about our allies, the species we've helped over the years? That's the good news, Kate replied. Many of them are refusing to support the Council's decision. The Altarians have declared their support for humanity. The Kepler colonists are mobilizing their defense fleets. The Centauri Federation is providing us with intelligence. Lisa nodded. Humanity had not just built colonies among the stars. They had built friendships. They had earned loyalty through their actions. The Council had forgotten that, and it would cost them. The Council thinks they're dealing with a single world, Lisa said. They think they can intimidate us into submission. They're about to learn that they're facing an entire species that refuses to give up. In the command center, President Karen Davis was preparing to address the nation. The speech would be broadcast to every human colony, every ship, every station. It would be humanity's formal response to the Council's ultimatum. Ma'am said, her chief of staff, "Are you sure about this? Once we make this declaration, there's no going back." Karen looked at the draft of her speech. It was short and simple, but it would change the galaxy forever. The Council made their choice. She said, "Now we make ours." The broadcast began at exactly noon, Earth time. Karen stood behind the presidential podium, her face calm but determined. Behind her was the flag of the United Earth Government, the symbol of humanity's unity. "My fellow humans," Karen began, "today we face the greatest challenge in our species, history. The Galactic Council has decided that we are too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. They want to destroy everything we have built among the stars." On colonies across human space, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In the asteroid mines, workers gathered around communication screens. On the agricultural worlds, farmers left their fields to hear their president's words. "They think we will surrender," Karen continued. "They think we will abandon our homes and our dreams. They think we will accept their cage. They are wrong." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of an entire species' determination. Humanity had always been different from the other races. They did not accept defeat. They did not bow to superior force. They fought for what was right, no matter the cost. "We will not abandon our colonies," Karen declared. "We will not reduce our military. We will not accept their ultimatum. The Council has declared war on us without firing a shot. We accept their challenge." The broadcast ended, but the message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight for their right to exist among the stars. On the military bases, soldiers were preparing for war. They checked their weapons and equipment. They studied maps of Council territories. They said goodbye to their families. They knew that many of them would not survive the coming conflict, but they were willing to die for humanity's future. "Remember what we're fighting for," said Colonel Danny Ross to his troops. "We're not fighting for conquest. We're not fighting for glory. We're fighting for the right of our children to grow up free." The soldiers nodded. They understood. This was not a war of choice. It was a war of survival. The Council had forced their hand, and now humanity would show them what happened when you cornered the most stubborn species in the galaxy. On the research stations, scientists were working to develop new weapons and defenses. Dr. Maya Rodriguez and her team had created devices that could punch through Council shields. Dr. Robert Kim had developed new armor that could resist Council weapons. The scientists were not soldiers, but they were contributing to the war effort in their own way. "Science is our greatest weapon," Maya said to her team. "The Council thinks they know everything about human technology. They're about to learn how wrong they are." In the shipyards, workers were building the largest fleet in human history. The ships were not just military vessels. They were symbols of human determination. Each one represented the refusal to surrender, the choice to fight rather than accept defeat. The merchant fleet was also preparing for war. Cargo ships were being converted into warships. Passenger liners were being turned into troop transports. The merchant captains were not military officers, but they were humans, and humans protected their own. "We're not warriors," said Captain Lisa Murphy to her crew, "but we're humans, and humans don't give up." The declaration had been made. The die was cast. Humanity would not submit to the Council's ultimatum. They would fight for their colonies, their freedom, and their future. The younger alien species were watching with interest. They had seen how humans had helped them over the years. They had benefited from human protection and friendship. Many of them were beginning to question the Council's decision. "Perhaps the Council is wrong," said the Altarian ambassador to his government. "Perhaps humans are not the threat they claim to be. Perhaps they are the galaxy's best hope for peace." The galaxy was dividing into two camps. On one side were the Council races, determined to maintain their control. On the other side were the humans and their allies, fighting for freedom and justice. The war had not yet begun, but the battle lines were already drawn. The Council had crossed the line, and humanity's wrath was about to be unleashed. The galaxy would never be the same. The first strike came without warning. The Draxian fleet, led by General Vexter, moved toward the human agricultural world of New Eden. The planet was peaceful, home to 3 million colonists who grew food for the entire sector. The Draxian expected easy victory. They were wrong. Captain Jake Morrison and the UES Defiant were waiting for them. The human ship hung in space like a sleeping predator, but Jake's crew was ready for battle. They had been planning for this moment for months. "Sir, 20 Draxian warships approaching," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "They're demanding our surrender." Jake smiled grimly. "Tell them we decline their offer. All ships, attack pattern Alpha." The space around New Eden suddenly filled with human warships. They had been hiding in the planet's asteroid field, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Draxians had expected to find a few defense ships. Instead, they found an entire battle fleet. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves. They had studied Draxian tactics for years and knew exactly how to counter them. The new weapons developed by Dr. Maya Rodriguez's team tore through Draxian shields like paper. The enemy ships began exploding one by one. "Imposible, General," Vextar said from his command ship. Human technology is not this advanced, but it was. Humanity had been preparing for this war in secret. While the Council thought they were dealing with a peaceful species, humans had been developing weapons that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner led his fighter squadron against the Draxian command ship. His pilots flew with a fury that shocked the enemy. They used tactics that seemed impossible, diving through enemy fire with precision that defied belief. "Blue leader to all squadrons," Alex called over the radio. "Remember what they tried to do to us. Make them pay." The human fighters swarmed the Draxian ship like angry bees. Their weapons were small, but deadly. They targeted weak points in the enemy armor, exploiting flaws that the Draxians had never bothered to fix. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, the Draxian fleet was destroyed. General Vextar's command ship was a burning wreck, drifting in space. The survivors were rescued by human ships. But the message was clear: humanity would not be an easy target. On the diplomatic front, the war was having unexpected effects. The younger alien species were watching the battles with growing interest. They had seen the Council's treatment of humanity, and they did not like it. "The humans saved our world from pirates last year," said the Altarian Prime Minister to his council. "They asked for nothing in return. Now the Council wants to destroy them. This is not justice." The Altarian Federation was the first to openly declare support for humanity. Their ships joined human battle fleets, and their scientists shared technology with human researchers. Other species began to follow their example. On the mining world of Kepler-4, Fortabi, the colonists were preparing for siege. The planet was rich in rare minerals that the Council wanted. The Draxians had sent a fleet to capture it, but the miners were ready. "They think we're just workers," said Station Chief Mary Johnson. "They think we'll run when they show up. They're about to learn that humans don't run." The miners had turned their industrial equipment into weapons. The same machines that dug through solid rock could destroy enemy ships. The mining platforms became fortresses, bristling with improvised weapons. When the Draxian fleet arrived, they found themselves facing an enemy they had never imagined. The miners fought with desperation and creativity, using every tool at their disposal. Asteroid mining charges became ship-killing missiles. Construction mechs became walking tanks. The battle for Kepler-442b lasted 4 weeks. The Draxians had superior numbers and better weapons, but the humans had something more important. They were fighting for their homes. In the end, the Draxian fleet was forced to retreat, leaving the miners victorious. The news of human victories spread throughout the galaxy. The Council races were shocked. They had expected easy conquest, not determined resistance. The humans were proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "How is this possible?" Ambassador Cuthbert demanded during an emergency council session. "Human technology was supposed to be inferior to ours. They have been hiding their true capabilities," replied the Zephyrian military advisor. "They have been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful." The Council had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that humanity's desire for peace meant weakness. They had confused diplomacy with cowardice. Now they were paying the price for their arrogance. On Earth, President Karen Davis was coordinating the global war effort. The planet that had given birth to humanity was now the command center for the largest military operation in galactic history. "Status report," Karen said to her advisors. "We've won battles at New Eden, Kepler-442b, and the Centauri system," reported Admiral William Clark. "Our allies are holding their positions. The Council fleets are retreating on all fronts." "Good," Karen replied. "But this is just the beginning. The Council will regroup and try again. We need to be ready." The war was escalating rapidly. What had started as an attempt to force humanity back to Earth had become a galaxy-wide conflict. The Council races were fighting not just humans, but also the younger species that had declared support for humanity in the research stations. Scientists were working around the clock to develop new weapons. Dr. Maya Rodriguez had created devices that could disable entire fleets. Dr. Robert Kim had developed armor that made human soldiers nearly invincible. "We're not just fighting for ourselves," Maya said to her team. "We're fighting for every species that refuses to bow to the Council's tyranny." The human military was adapting to the new reality of war. Soldiers who had been trained for peacekeeping were learning to fight for survival. The transformation was remarkable and terrifying. "The Council wanted to see what humans were really capable of," said General Rick Thompson to his Marines. "Well, now they're going to find out." The Marines were fighting on dozens of worlds, protecting human colonies and alien allies. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were winning through sheer determination and superior tactics. On the merchant ships, captains were learning to fight alongside the military. The converted cargo vessels were not as powerful as warships, but they were numerous and crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. "We're not soldiers," said Captain Lisa Murphy to her crew, "but we're humans, and humans don't surrender." The merchant fleet was proving to be a valuable asset. The ships could carry troops and supplies to distant battlefields. They could strike at enemy positions and then disappear into the vastness of space. The Council was beginning to realize the magnitude of their mistake. They had awakened a sleeping giant. Humanity was not just fighting for their colonies. They were fighting for their right to exist, and that made them the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Council had crossed the line, and humanity's wrath had been unleashed. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Council's ultimatum, Ambassador Cuthbert stood in the ruins of what had once been the most powerful government building in the galaxy. The council chambers on Centauri Prime were destroyed, their walls cracked and their floors covered in debris. The war had not gone as planned. The Zephyrian ambassador looked out through the broken windows at the human fleet orbiting his homeworld. The UES Vengeance, flagship of Admiral Lisa Parker's armada, hung in the sky like a steel moon. The tables had turned completely. Now it was the council species facing destruction. "How did we get here?" Kethfer asked his aide, a young Zephyrian named Velta. "We underestimated them," Velta replied quietly. "We thought they were weak because they preferred peace. We thought they would surrender when faced with superior force. We were wrong. The war had lasted only 6 months, but it had changed everything. The human response had been swift, decisive, and utterly devastating. What the council had thought would be a simple police action had become a fight for survival. President Karen Davis arrived on Centauri Prime, not as a beggar seeking mercy, but as the leader of the galaxy's newest superpower. Her ship, the UES Unity, landed in the spaceport that had once welcomed only council dignitaries. Now it served as the landing site for humanity's triumph. "Madam President," said General Rick Thompson, who had commanded the ground forces during the siege of Centauri Prime, "the council survivors are ready to negotiate." Karen nodded. The Marines had taken the planet in 3 days, facing minimal resistance. The Zephyrian military had collapsed after months of defeats. Their soldiers had no will to fight against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The negotiations took place in what had once been the council's Grand Assembly Hall. The room had been designed to intimidate visitors with its massive size and golden decorations. Now it was a symbol of fallen power, its grandeur made meaningless by defeat. "The terms are simple," Karen said to the assembled council survivors. "Full recognition of human sovereignty over our colonies, reparations for the damages caused by your war, and most importantly, constitutional reforms to prevent this from happening again." Ambassador Kethfer, his once proud uniform torn and dirty, looked around the room at his fellow council members. The Draxian military leaders were gone, their species nearly extinct after months of devastating defeats. The other races were broken, their fleets destroyed, and their worlds occupied. "You are asking us to abandon everything we have built," Kethfer said weakly. "You should have thought of that before you tried to destroy us," replied Admiral Lisa Parker. She had escaped from the council's prison months ago, and now she was dictating terms to her former captors. The human colonies had not just survived the council's assault, they had grown stronger. The mining worlds were producing more resources than ever before. The agricultural planets were feeding not just human settlements, but also the liberated worlds of former council subjects. Captain Ben Hayes had made a discovery that changed everything. While exploring the Outer Rim, his ship had found evidence of an ancient threat that had once nearly destroyed the galaxy. The Council's attempt to weaken humanity had left the galaxy vulnerable to this returning danger. "The Void Hunters are coming back," Ben reported to the human leadership. "The ancient enemy that our alien friends have forgotten about." The Council was so focused on fighting us that they ignored the real threat. The Void Hunters were a machine, intelligence that had ravaged the galaxy thousands of years ago. They had been defeated by a coalition of alien species, but the victory had cost billions of lives. The Council races had forgotten the lessons of that ancient war. "Only humanity has the technology to stop them," Ben continued. "Our adaptability, our creativity, our refusal to accept defeat. These are exactly the qualities needed to fight the Void Hunters." The irony was perfect. The Council had tried to destroy humanity because they feared human strength. Now that same strength was the galaxy's only hope for survival. The final treaty was signed on Earth, in the same building where humanity had once begged for acceptance among the stars. The roles had reversed completely. Now, the surviving Council members came to humanity's homeworld as defeated enemies, seeking mercy. The ceremony was simple, but powerful. President Karen Davis signed the document that would reshape the galaxy. The treaty established human leadership over a new galactic government, one based on cooperation rather than domination. We did not seek this war, Karen said to the assembled delegates. We wanted only to live in peace among the stars. But you forced our hand, and now we must take responsibility for the galaxy's future. The younger alien species had played a crucial role in humanity's victory. The Altarians, the Kepler colonists, and dozens of other races had fought alongside human forces. They had proven that the galaxy's future belonged to those who chose cooperation over conquest. The humans saved us from the Council's tyranny, said the Altarian Prime Minister. They gave us hope when we had none. They showed us that freedom was possible. The human military was already adapting to its new role. Soldiers who had fought for survival were now learning to be peacekeepers. The transformation was remarkable, showing humanity's ability to change with circumstances. We're not conquerors, said General Rick Thompson to his troops. We're protectors. We fight to defend freedom, not to impose our will on others. The war had revealed something important about humanity. They were not just good at fighting, they were good at bringing out the best in others. The alien species that had joined their cause had fought with courage they never knew they possessed. On the research stations, scientists were already working on the next challenge. Dr. Maya Rodriguez was developing defenses against the void hunters. Dr. Robert Kim was studying the ancient enemy's weaknesses. The galaxy's best minds were united in preparation for the coming threat. We've proven that we can win wars, Maya said to her team. Now we need to prove that we can build peace. The merchant fleet was returning to its original purpose, carrying trade goods instead of weapons. But the converted warships remained ready for action. The galaxy had learned that humans were capable of incredible violence when threatened, and that knowledge would help maintain peace. We're back to being traders, said Captain Lisa Murphy. But everyone knows what we can become if we have to. The victory had come at a cost. Thousands of human soldiers had died in the war. Entire colonies had been damaged by Council attacks. But the sacrifice had been worth it. Humanity had not just survived the Council's betrayal. They had transcended it. The galaxy was entering a new age. The old order, based on fear and domination, was gone. In its place was something different, a government based on cooperation and mutual respect. The Council had tried to destroy humanity's future, but they had only made it brighter. The stars themselves seemed to shine more brightly, as if celebrating the moment when humanity finally claimed their true place among them. The galaxy had a new guardian, and that guardian was the species that refused to surrender, refused to accept defeat, and refused to let freedom die. The Council had crossed the line, and humanity's wrath had been unleashed. Now, with the war over and victory achieved, that same wrath was being transformed into something else, hope for a better future among the stars.